Now, when you first launch SketchUp, you'll have a welcome screen, something like what I have here on my screen. And you're being asked right away to choose a template. Now go ahead and click on the Simple template, and you'll launch SketchUp in that template. So what we want to take a few minutes to do here right away is get our workspace set up. A quick tour. Across the top, we have our top menu, starting with the word File here. Then we have some tools on a toolbar. We have what's known as our drawing window. That's this area where we have the green, the person standing, and the blue in the background. Over to the right, there's the default tray. It might have some different things turned on, or it might look exactly like mine. We'll get to that in a moment. And then there's supposed to be something across the bottom here. So I'm not talking about the computer toolbar I have here. There's supposed to be a little bit of SketchUp across the bottom. If you just show going to your computer toolbar like I do, and you don't have an extra little light gray area of SketchUp on the bottom, move your cursor up to the top where you have this square for maximizing your window. Go ahead and click on that square. And that will jump the bottom of SketchUp up, so you get this bottom area of the window here with some words and some extra information across the bottom. Okay, now let's talk about the template we chose. We chose the Simple template, which started us off in a particular kind of view and with some certain kinds of background colors on. And also, it said simple inches when we chose it, so the template is using inches. Let's set up a different template. So go up to your top menu and select the Window menu option, and then find where it says Preferences. Go ahead and click on Preferences. Your SketchUp Preferences window opens up. On the left-hand side, towards the bottom, there's something that says Template. Go ahead and click on that option. And you'll notice that we have some of the same templates that we saw earlier. I want you to scroll down until you find where it says Plan View, and then under Units it says Inches. Go ahead and click on that once to select it, and then click OK. Nothing will change in your current drawing window because a template change will not affect the file you're in. It only affects every new file that you start. So go to your top menu where it says File. Go ahead and click on File, and then pick the option for New. And you'll see that you have a new file opening up in the new template you chose. So here's what's going on with the template. First of all, you notice all the color is turned off. So there's some things about something known as styles that change from template to template. In our case, for all of our lessons, we're going to start with this clean white screen. It'll make it a little easier to understand what's going on. We can always go back and add in background colors later, and we'll talk about that in a future lesson. Another thing that's being controlled here is the view we have. So if you notice, in the upper left-hand corner of your drawing window, there's a word now. It says Top. This lets you know you're in a top-down view, or something that looks like a plan view. So we're just looking down, whereas in the last template that we started with, we were looking in more of a perspective bird's eye view. This will all make a lot of sense soon, so don't worry too much about it yet. And then with templates, you're choosing what measurement units you're using, whether they are inches or feet and inches, or if you're using metric units such as meters, centimeters, millimeters. In our case, we're using inches here. Now, if you need to use metric units because of the types of projects you work on or where you're at in the world, I suggest that you go ahead and use inches with me for these early lessons, and then that way you can follow along really easily as I maybe mention things in feet and inches, and then you can always change your template later, and I'll show you how to do that, back to the metric units for your particular projects. Of course, if you feel like you can follow along and you stay in the metric template, that's fine too. Just make sure that you use the plan view version of the metric template. Okay, so we have our template set up the same, but we have a few other things that we need to organize before we get started learning SketchUp. So first of all, I want to make sure that we have the right tools turned on our toolbar here. Now, there's a default set that comes across the top, but we're going to change that. So do this. Go up to your top menu where it says View. Go ahead and click on the View option. And then you'll notice it says Toolbars. Go ahead and click on Toolbars. Your Toolbars window dialog will come up. And you'll notice you have a series of checkboxes here, with Getting Started being already checked. So click once on the checkbox next to Getting Started to uncheck the Getting Started toolbar. We don't need that one, and you'll see why in a moment. Just beneath it, there's the Large Toolset. Go ahead and click to check on the Large Toolset. This will give us back some of the tools that were across the top, but a few others as well. And I want you to have that so that we can more easily access some of these tools. Then scroll down this list, and I want you to also turn on Styles, Views, and Standard. You'll notice that that turns on those toolbars up top. And then with all of that done, go ahead and click on the option for Close. Now there's one more thing. We can organize these toolbars so that they're a little bit more organized across the top. So notice these little dots on the left, for example, of these series of boxes. If you hover over it, your cursor turns into a series of arrows in all four directions. Go ahead and click and hold down and drag, and you can move that toolbar around. So go ahead and move it all the way over to the left. Then do the same with these house icons. Click and drag it all the way over until it's next to these boxes. And then on this top toolbar here, go ahead and click and drag this one down till it's sitting next to those houses. So now we've consolidated this top area to one long toolbar rather than a couple of scattered toolbars. And then with this large tool set, you can hover over the top dotted area and just drag it up so it's up against there. So you can play around with dragging these toolbars around and organizing them in different ways, but this is the way that we'll use for our lessons here. Now another thing is the default tray over to the right. On a PC, you have the default tray. Now you'll notice in other lessons in our courses, I'll be primarily using a Mac computer. And one of the big major differences is that I will not have a default tray. And on a PC, you will have a default tray. So what does that mean? Well, any time that we're looking for some sort of extra window in SketchUp, we'll always go over to the Window menu option at the top. So go ahead and click on Window. Now, on my Mac, you'll see that when I choose things, I'll only have a list under Window of all the different things I could possibly choose. On a PC, you'll have a few of the same things like Model Info, View Warehouse, Extension Warehouse. These things here will be the same, but then you'll think you're missing the rest of what I have on a Mac. Actually, you have all the same stuff. It's just under your default tray option. So if you hover over default tray and move your cursor over, you'll see the rest of the options sit here for you. Now, if there's a checkbox and it's checked on, that means that over on the right, it's already in your default tray. If you have something that's not checked, you would click on it once here, and it would add it. Notice I clicked on Fog, and it added it to the bottom of my default tray. So just know that anytime that I go up to the Window menu option, and I choose something in my long list of options on a Mac, you'll see that over in your default tray, that's where the same options are for you. So the main idea here is your default tray is on. Clicking on any of these individual items will either open up the information or close the information about it. If you click on the X next to any of these, it will just hide it for now from the default tray. And you could always turn it back on by going over to your Window menu option, hovering over default tray, and then checking on anything you want to be in that tray. That all being said, I'm going to click in white space once. I suggest that you remove the instructor. I find that it ends up just being kind of distracting. So you can go ahead and click the X to hide instructor. And then I suggest you leave everything else from the default the same over here. And in general, I suggest you go ahead and leave the default tray turned on. And then I'll be sure to point out later in the lessons when we're doing something and remind you that you'll be looking for something in the default tray. One more quick difference to point out here on the PC versus the Mac that you'll see me using in other upcoming lessons is in this toolbar here, this toolbar that starts with this plus here and goes down through this one with this little info. So on my Mac, as you'll see later, I don't have any of these icons. The only ones I have are these two arrows here, the undo and the redo. Now by default, yours are grayed out until you start doing things that you would undo and redo. You'll see on my Mac, mine are always both blue, but that's just a subtle difference. So really this whole toolbar is just there so that you have the undo and the redo arrows, and you can sort of ignore the rest, at least for now, when you look at the lessons compared to my screen on the Mac. Okay, so we know about the default tray. We have our workspace set up. All our toolbars are ready to go. So we're ready to get started learning SketchUp with the next lesson.